This is the first part of Shir Tesvav. And the Gemara starts off with quoting Rabbah. Amar Rabbah, Rabbah said, V'hu shechasra, and it only applies where the animal tunneled under the wall. Now Rabbah does not explain exactly what he's talking about, what the it is, and the Gemara is going to try to figure out when Rabbah said that a certain halacha in our Mishnah only applies when the animal tunneled under the wall. What was he talking about? So the Gemara assumes first that the case that we're talking about is the case of nifritza b'layla v'yatza v'hizika pater, that if the wall fell down at night, the Mishnah said, and the animal went out and caused damage, that the owner is pater. To this, Rabbah said, Amar Rabbah v'hu shechasra, that the only time he's pater is only when it digs under the wall, and the wall became weak, and then caused the wall to fall down, and an animal subsequently went and snuck out. In such a case, the owner is considered to be an einus. So this is such an unusual thing for an animal to tunnel under. So in such a case, he's pater. Now the Gemara says that this implies, and if let's say the wall fell down without anybody digging under it, in such a case, it would sound like he's chayiv, right? As we have over here in this graphic, that he's pater when it tunnels under because that's an einus, which is mashma, that if it did not tunnel under, but rather the wall fell down on its own, he's going to be, in that case, chayiv. So I want you just to get this part clear, that from Rabbah's statement, it sounds like that if only time he's pater is only if it digs under the wall, because then it's an einus. But if he does not dig under the wall, then it's going to be chayiv. The owner will be chayiv. So again, just to recap over here, Rabbah says that he's pater only when the animal tunneled out, which the Gemara says that it must mean that if the animal didn't tunnel out and the wall just fell down by itself, he would be chayiv. Right? So in simple English, is Rabbah says if it tunneled out, he's pater. If it didn't tunnel out and the wall fell down by itself, then the owner is chayiv. Okay, this is part one. You have to get this clear before you move on to the next part. We will now continue with the third part of Shir Tesvav, the third and final part of Shir Tesvav. If you remember, Rabbah's statement said that if you tunnel, you're pater. If you don't tunnel, you're chayiv. And the Gemara originally thought it was talking about nifritza b'layla v'yatza v'zika pater. And the Gemara in the second part of this shir proved that it cannot be talking about the case of nifritza b'layla. Now the Gemara now is going to explain what Rabbah said. And he says like this, that Rabbah was actually not talking about the case of at night, but talking about a different case of hinicha b'chama, if the owner left the animal in the hot sun, or he gave it over to be watched by a deaf, mute person. Shaita is someone who is insane. A katan is a minor. And the animal got out and damaged the owner's chayiv. Now, before we said that Amar Rabbah v'hu shechasra, that it is only when it dug out, but the Gemara now changes it. That no, Amar Rabbah v'afilu chasra. Even if it dug out, the owner is going to be chayiv. And what that means is like this, that it's obvious that if the owner locked it up, even if the owner locked it up properly behind a good wall, you have to understand that a good wall for an animal doesn't mean that it's impossible for the animal to get out. As we learned earlier, when it says that you locked it up properly, it means a wall that is able to stand in a ruach mitzuya, in a normal common wind. A normal common wind does not mean an animal can't get out. It means it normally will not get out. So let's say the owner locked it up in a very hot in the hot sun, and the animal went and knocked down the wall and got out. Now that's obvious that the owner would be pesheya in such a case, and it would be chayiv because the animal obviously that's not a good enough shmira. A delis shechayla lamed beruach mitzuya, a regular wall is not enough when you locked it up in the very hot sun, and you'll be chayiv if it managed to get out and do it. And that's obvious you'd be chayiv because you're pesheya. But let's say the owner locked it up and the animal couldn't get out. And the only way it got out is because it tunneled out. In such a case, you might have thought that the owner is pater because it's an einus. The animal did something that was so unusual that it dug under it, made the land weak, crumbling the wall, and then the animal got out and caused damage. You might think in such a case the owner is going to be pater, it's an einus. So Rabbah says, afilu chasra, that even if it dug out, in such a case, the owner is going to be chayiv. And the reason why that is because once an animal is in a situation that it is very painful for the animal will do anything to get out, including digging under the wall. And therefore, anything that it does is considered to be the pshia of the owner, and the owner is chayiv. And that is how we understand Rabbah's statement. The Rabbah's statement about digging was even if it dug out in the case of inicha b'chama oishemasra l'cher shaita v'katan. Gentlemen, I look forward to you guys being experts in this Gemara.